Hey guys, Jason87 continuing where I left off with Home Alone, and I'm talking about Home Alone 2 Lost in New York. One of the second to last holiday films we'll be reviewing, and this one is kind of interesting because this is the one film that everybody says started the downward spiral of John Hughes' production, at least in terms of films and directing. I am a little bit disagreeing on that category for a large part that I didn't hate this film as much as everybody else did. The people who I saw it with didn't hate this film. But after watching this film again and again and watching it recently, I can pretty much understand why they didn't like this film as much as the first one. Let me first say that in this film, as you know, it really wasn't much of him being alone in the house, but more being lost in a giant city. And that's where the theme Lost in New York comes from. It's pretty much, if you put Lost in New York as the second story, it pretty much will sums up the whole entire film. Other than that, I have to say that this film didn't have anything new to the table other than the traps. The traps were different. The black and white movie that they used in the first one was different. Same star, but different scene, and they used the same way in a hotel room. And the house, although it wasn't his, it was a relative which was renovating and was doing constructions. He used that as the form of tricking the bad guys, which was once again played by Daniel Stern and Joe Pesci. This film I saw with a group in Jersey. We had a choice to pick between this, Malcolm X, and JFK. No one didn't want to see JFK. There were people debating actually to see Malcolm X, but in the end, it was holidays. It was near Christmas, and we didn't really want to see a serious film during the holiday season. So we went to see Home Alone 2. The crowd was into this film. I can tell you right now. I still remember the crowd laughing at a lot of great scenes. Of course, the trap scene got everybody rolling in their seats. I was dying laughing hard in this movie. But I can tell you that's pretty much it. And the reason why is if you saw the film the first time, if you saw the first Home Alone, it's almost the same story. The only difference is that instead of waking up late and missing and being left out, he was already ahead of the game. He was already in the car waiting. The only reason why he got lost, he had a Walkman recorder that had like a microphone that you pulled out. Pretty much was a hot seller when the movie came out. It was actually, a lot of people had that for reasons I don't know. It's the same thing. It's the same recorder, but it was more of a toy recorder that you can actually slow down the voice a bit. That was the only difference. But this was a very important tool to the movies, and he used it pretty cleverly. I gotta tell you, with Macaulay Culkin's character, he knows how to use the things to his advantage, and that's one thing I will give it to Macaulay Culkin's character. It definitely knows how to use it as a character. In this film, how this scenario got started, I might as well say, is the fact that once again they said some harsh words after his brother basically ruined a Christmas concert. He was supposed to do a song, and he was making fun of him, and he was so ticked off that he has to apologize, that he said some other crazy things. And this one, which I actually now remember, they were supposed to go to Miami, but what ended up happening was, as again, they, for some reason, I forgot what it was this time, but the power went off again. They woke up late, but they did manage to get to the flight this time, but unfortunately Macaulay Culkin's character was changing the batteries, and he lost sight of his father, and he ended up following the same guy who had his father's coat, and he ended up following him all the way to New York because he had his back to him, so he didn't see it. He just saw the coat, so he recognized it based on the coat, and he bumped into, I think, one of the helpers of the airlines studios, I think you call them, and he knocked him over, and his ticket was in that pile because his ticket got mixed up with all the piles. If they would have saw his ticket, they would have seen it, but instead of checking the ticket like any professional person would, they just let him in the plane and they sat him down, and he just took off from there. He didn't hear the announcement of New York because he had his headphones on, and of course they had to make sure that he didn't hear that they was heading to New York, not Miami. And again, we have the situation where he ends up in New York while the family is in Miami. And again, how they found out that this was happening is the fact is that when they went to get the bags, he wasn't there, and again, he left them alone. Not pretty much alone in the house, but pretty much went on separate flights. Macaulay Culkin took his ordeal to stride. He basically basically got into a hotel, basically ordered all these food, went touring New York, which I have to say, good job by Chris Columbus, who directed the first film, directed this film, did a good job of painting the city well. I think he did a very fantastic job of capturing some of the light in the cities. For Macaulay, he was just living it up. He was having a ball. Eating hotel food, eating candies, and just living the life of a king, pretty much. Marv, it was turned out that Marv and Harry escaped the prison. Ended up being in New York, and they decided rather than just rob houses, they was going to rob a toy store, which had a donation drive, and every Christmas, this donation, the owner of the store basically gives out the money and gives them free gifts, or to all the children who was not very fortunate to this hospital. They were pretty much sick children. Kevin have gotten wind about it, of course, after he realized that by coincidence they both bump into each other into the big city, and a lot of hijinks came on from there. He ended up chasing them back to New York. He had hijinks with the manager of the hotel, who was suspicious from day one, which was played pretty good by Tim Carey. I actually like Tim Carey. As crazy as it may sound, I actually enjoy Tim Carey movies. As crazy, as stupid as his movies may be, he makes it all fun to watch. I always did enjoy it, and when I found out he was actually in this film, I was very, very happy because he really did play that part well. And all same hijinks, the pranks with the shower when they went to investigate the room, the videotape, the pranks was funny. It was old, but it was still fun to watch. And of course, you had the grand finale, of course, the renovated house, which he turned into his own personal booby trap. And even though I would think by now that learning from the lesson the first time, you just leave it alone and let it be, they continued they went in there, and we all know what happened after that. Let me get to the good and bad parts about this film. I'm going to get to the bad parts about this film first, because the bad this time did outweigh the good. If you go back and look at it, this film had really nothing new to the table other than the fact that the booby traps was still fun to look at. But that's it. The booby traps and the pranks was pretty much the only thing that really was worth watching this film. And unfortunately, it wasn't strong enough to keep the film as good as the original. And I tell you why. The problem I had with the first film, the first Home Alone film, is pretty much visible here. I didn't like Macaulay Culkin's acting. As a person who's clever and handling traps, I thought he played that well. I thought he played it fine, but overall his acting not very good. The same thing they did with the old next door neighbor. They did it in this film. Only now it's the bird lady. There's a lady with a bunch of pigeons in her head, and she lives underneath an orchestra, a building where they play orchestra. How she managed to get in there, I don't know. I'm not questioning it. But it's the same story of moral values that they have, and to me, it doesn't help the film. It really doesn't. Again, the fact that they didn't, that the hotel owner didn't manage to detain the McCuskers, and or haven't. I think it was because he was reported stolen. So I kind of sort of understand what it is, and he never even liked him to begin with. But the way they handle it, okay, whatever. But like I said, there was just a lot of stuff that was not really, people didn't care less about. It was predictable pretty much with the overall story. But those people that did care about the traps and the gadget, I think it was pretty good. I thought it was fun. I actually enjoyed myself. So in my opinion, this film pretty much is, if you want to see the traps, if you want to see him do, outsmart the bad guys, outsmart some of the neighbors, including including even his own family members at no less. If you want to see him how he pulls off all these cons and tricks, then I think you'll like this film a lot more than those who were actually looking for a better story as a whole. Because the story, it just was not there. I mean, it was the same story as the first one, and I think people that for that reason, I think people hated that for that. I know a lot of people hated this one. They trashed part 2 almost as much as they trashed part 4, and I thought part 4 was the worst of all of them. But then again, part 4, barely anybody saw because it was a made-for-TV movie. And anytime when a movie that's been in theaters all this time, that's been made strictly for television, you're not going to get the same quality. I think even Daniel Stern bashed the fourth one, which I will not get into in this series, by the way, guys. I probably would down the road, but as far as I'm concerned, this is the last stuff for Home Alone for now. I will talk about 3, but later on. But yeah, it's not something that all that special. It's definitely not. It's a 2.5-star film. It's not bad, but it could have been way better. Like I said, for a diehard Home Alone fan, they probably would enjoy this a lot more than I did and a lot of other people did. But to me, this film really did not have the same weight or the same magic as the first one did. If this film had something like new in terms of story structure, I think this film would have been liked a lot more. But because of that and that alone, I think people just they didn't care for it too much, and it's unfortunate, but people didn't care for it much, and that pretty much hurt 3, and it definitely hurt it 4. But it's a quiet taste, I guess. So 2.5 stars. It's not a terrible movie, not by any stretch of the least. But it's not something to sit there and say, oh, this is great. Nobody's talking about Home Alone 2. And for the most part, for reasons why I thought that Home Alone 1 was a tad bit overrated. But you guys have your own opinion about that. You have your own feeling about that. So I'll leave that to you guys to comment on. Until then, it's J77 signing off.